It seems like when Achilles becomes angry, it's like he's almost beyond human. He almost becomes rage rather than a person who's angry. He just becomes a sort of ball of energy of anger that just destroys everything in his path. And there's no compassion or there's nothing to that because it is like he just is anger. And then it seems like when he agrees to give Priam the Hector's body back, it's like he's been just sort of drained of emotions. And I think that I can sort of understand that when you feel like something so awful has happened, you sort of go through your different phases, but you come to a point where you just sort of accept it and almost feel nothing towards it. Like you say, okay, this is what it is, and you'll start to feel things again later. But for a little bit, you're like, it just happened. I don't, and it seems like he's almost numb to it, to this sort of, we have no control. We have no control over this situation, over this war, over the fact that we ended up here. Him and Priam, it's like he could have been in Hector's position and died, and that could be his father just as much as the roles could have been reversed, and he just sort of and it's not like his anger is gone, and he's not, but he just sort of is, it's almost like this sort of emptiness, I thought. I don't know.
Seems like rage. Seems like rage can't be the basis for an entire story. Rage is a sort of very unstructured emotion, I guess. And so, when you have rage, your rage feels unique to you. You can't draw parallels between yourself and other people's rages. And so, if you're trying to base a story just on rage, it's not going to go anywhere. It's going to be people killing each other the entire time. So, if you want to have a more structured story, you have to get other emotions, like love, for instance, where you can draw parallels between different kinds of people, and you can sort of have more structure to love because there's a clear beginning, middle, and end there, I guess, whereas rage is just one sort of like constant, sort of incoherent type of emotion.
But there's not any love in this. I mean, what's the actual emotion between Achilles and Priam that Achilles feels that leads him to give the body back?
For his own father, I guess.
So what would you call that?
Yeah.
Sympathy.
Yeah,
Yes,
empathy, I think, isn't it? It's an empathic response.
But then Prime is also told to leave, that there's some sense that this isn't going to last very long. So you need to take the body and go now before your moment of reprieve is gone. And, the rage returns. There's a sense that the rage is quelled for a moment, but,
So tell me a little about Hector. Hector, in the story that I've heard from you, is a minor character. He's almost like the foil.
Wouldn't say the foil's minor, though. The foil's essential to define the main character here, Achilles. Achilles wouldn't exist without Hector, in a sense, and maybe goes back to the trading of the armor and other things as well, that you can't view one without viewing him in the mirror of the other. Hector, in some ways, is Achilles' opposite in that he does have points of decision where he reflects and thinks and moves forward, and the points where he goes into battle, he does so to protect his people, whereas as a mirror for Achilles lets the people die out of hubris and a feeling of repairing his honor. And so in some ways they're so intimately connected you can't know one without the other.
And all of Troy is resting on Hector. Like, it's almost, I think one of the reasons they don't need to show the fall of Troy, because that when Hector dies, Troy falls. And like when Hector and Andromache are talking on the wall, it's like they're not just talking about Hector dying, they're talking about Troy falling, that it's inevitable, which isn't true. It's not true in the same way about Achilles. It's not. Yes, they need him to fight, but it's like all of Troy's hope, everything. That they're like one. When Hector dies, Troy dies, and I think that's true.
Achilles is half god, right? His mother's a goddess. And she gives him the choice somewhere right at the beginning of this epic. You can go home and live, but I'm telling you, you're going to die if you stay. And then there's a chapter, which I don't know if you all found to be somewhat comic and maybe a little misplaced. There's a chapter in which the gods decide to do a battle, and it's really silly and funny. It's comic relief. And the reason it's comic relief is because they can't die, so there's nothing at stake. Now, I think that Achilles had the symbolic choice the same way of not really dying, and he chose, somewhere in this, to get back into the battle knowing he was going to die. In other words, he chose to become fully human. And he meets then, when he meets Hector, it's man to man. And there's no gods interfering, it's just man to man, and he's human. And I think because he's human in that situation, he's then susceptible to empathy. And I disagree with you a little that he doesn't reflect. I think after that point, he reflects. He's capable of reflecting. He has a lot at stake. He's actually human now. And the rage is transformed from this, exactly what you say, this just ball of energy that has nothing human seeming about it, into a human person who dies. And that's where the glory comes in the end. And that's why we remember him. Not because he was a great warrior, but because he chose to be human.